Guten Tag. Today I will show you how to make amazing and easy sourdough bread rolls. Exactly the way how we Germans like them. What's awesome about this recipe is that they are really easy to make. It's all based on a very cool and easy trick that I will show you later in this video. On top of that, the recipe that I will show you is super versatile and can be used for different flours as well, such as Spelt, rye, Emmer or Einkorn. What adds additional awesome sauce to this recipe is that you can perfectly time the bread rolls exactly when you want to have them ready. For dinner, for instance, or for breakfast. I'm a very lazy German and I don't like to wake up so early, so this is the perfect go-to recipe for me. On top of that, my family is very happy when they have them for breakfast. Side note, we here in Germany call them Brötchen. Now, Brötchen is very hard to pronounce. I challenge you to try that for yourself. Brötchen. Anyways, let's get started with making the dough. Now, the cool thing about this recipe is that you can use any recipes that you already have and convert it to this technique. So if you already have your favorite setup, your favorite process, please do that and just skip 1 minute ahead. That's because the dough for bread and bread rolls is the same. Anyways, if you don't have a favorite recipe, I'm gonna show you the short quick version of this. So basic sourdough bread only consists of 3 ingredients: flour, water and salt. Your sourdough starter also only consists of flour and water. You need to have your own sourdough starter. If you don't have one yet, please check out this video that I'm linking right here. It will make you an excellent sourdough starter in no time. For the recipe for the dough, you want to mix flour, water and salt and your sourdough starter right from the start. For around 8 bread rolls, you want to use 400 grams of flour. Mix that with around 320 grams of water. This depends a little bit on your flour. I'm using a very strong bread flour, which is a flour which has a lot of protein. Just to be safe, you can also reduce this a little bit. This is something that you have to experiment on your own with. The value that I'm suggesting you really depends on your flour. This is what most recipes lack. They assume you always have the perfect flour. But if you don't have so high protein content, check the packaging, go lower with water. You can start with 240 grams of water. I'm using 320 grams, so you can experiment a little bit with what works best for you. Then add 8 grams of salt to your dough. And I like to use a little bit less sourdough starter. We are only going to be using 40 grams of sourdough starter. I'm using a liquid starter, and that liquid starter actually increases the water level of your dough even a little bit more. You have to be careful. So we're not going to be doing any autolysis, which some bread recipe calls for. No, nothing. We mix everything together right away. Then you have to knead everything. You can do that by hand or you can use a stand mixer. Both works. If you're kneading by the hands, then I have a great video for you, 5 tips to create incredible dough strengths. You want to check that out. If you're using a stand mixer, mix until you see that the dough lets go of the bowl. You created an awesome dough now. What we're going to do is we're going to extract a small piece of the dough. This is our fermentation sample. And by judging the size increase, we know that our dough is ready. So what might take 5 hours for me could take 10 hours for you. But with the small sample, you will always nail this fermentation aspect exactly on point. If you've never used the fermentation sample, try to aim for around a 50% size increase of this dough inside of the sample jar. If you have a strong flour like me, which has a high protein content, I'm linking it in the description, then you can go even further. You can inflate your dough more. This is because the lactic acid bacteria of your sourdough are actually converting your gluten. They are eating your gluten network. So if there's more, your dough can ferment longer, which means you have a fluffier dough in the end. So your sample has now increased in size by around 50% up to 100%. Then it's ready to shape your dough. For shaping, use any shaping technique that you have. And this is where this recipe is actually different. We are not going to shape our bread rolls right now. We're just gonna make a regular sourdough bread. But there's one trick that you have to follow. More on that in a little bit. So you're shaping your sourdough bread and you're placing it inside of your banneton. If you don't have a banneton, what you can do is you can just use a bowl, put a kitchen towel inside and put your dough in there. Same effect as a banneton, but very cheap. Me as a German, I approve that. So your dough is ready now. Now the proofing stage is starting. What you normally do is you wait for the finger poke test to pass. So you poke your dough and then you bake your bread. But what we are going to do, the essential thing of this recipe is we will take our dough and we will put our dough into our very cold fridge. Kühlschrank. Very cold fridge. Sehr, 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 sehr important. The fridge is going to put the fermentation almost to a halt. Your dough is going to continue ferment inside of this fridge, but when it's below 6 degrees Celsius, then the fermentation activity stops. But we are using that to our advantage. The dough is also becoming very stiff. The molecules don't like to move so much when it's cold. And we use that to our advantage. Around 8 hours later, at least 8 hours, our dough has nicely cooled down. But you can wait for up to 24-48 hours. No problem, this also works. Around 1 hour before you want to have breakfast or dinner, you start to take the dough out of the fridge. So let's say at 10 a.m. you want to have breakfast. Then at 9 a.m. you need to start with the next step. The dough could have been in the fridge for 12 hours or 24 hours, exactly what I said. If you wait for too long, your gluten network relaxes quite a lot and then you'll have rather flat, tiny bread rolls, which is okay, they're still going to taste awesome, but they won't have such a nice oven spring. So 1 hour before breakfast, it's time to surprise your friends with awesome bread rolls coming in.
Let me pause here for a second. You might be wondering why there is a random picture of a cute little cat right now. Okay, there is actually no explanation. This was totally random, just like most of the ads. So, sorry. Now on a more pressing matter, have you ever seen a sourdough on a camel? Well, I take bread pit wherever I travel. My goal is to create the most traveled sourdough on this planet. Hopefully one day I can make this channel my full-time job and geek out even more about sourdough. If you want to support me on my quest, please consider subscribing or buying some of this cool merchandise, such as a sourdough infographic. Infographic contains all the information you need to master the sourdough process from start to finish. Plus, it might look pretty cool inside of your kitchen. Now, let me end this very annoying advertisement by showing you an additional bonus picture of Brad Pitt on the road. It can be a bumpy road making sourdough, you know? Okay, that was a very poor joke. I'm out of here. Bye!
Now you need to prepare a tray, and for the tray I added some parchment paper and I used it from this side, but we Germans would never let something go to the waste. So I'm just gonna flip this over. Then next I prepared a bowl with cold water and some seeds, some sunflower and some flax seeds, I think. And you also want to have this tool, a dough scraper. All right, this is our dough and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this over. Whoops. And now this is a little bit like schnitzel almost. I'm gonna chop this into pieces, bounce it in the water, then in the seeds, and then here on the tray. The seeds are optional. I like the water because it also helps to create additional steam. This helps to make them a little bit more fluffy. Anyways, I'm gonna just chop this like this. And then I do 1, 2, 3. So 3 little buns here in the water. Whoops. In the seeds. And then on the tray. One more time, it's a little bit complicated. Water, tray, water seeds, and then on the tray. Oops, nice. You can also just do like this. Ta-da! And those are our buns, ready to bake. Heat the oven for around 15 minutes to 230 degrees Celsius. I have no idea how much that is in Fahrenheit, but I'll be putting it right here. I'm baking them with another tray on top. This makes sure that all the steam of them is trapped below, simulating a Dutch oven. Make sure to turn off the fan and now then 230 degrees Celsius for around 20 to 30 minutes. And voila, here are the dinner rolls. I did actually something very cool, so I baked 2 iterations. Those 3 here are the first iterations, the rest I gave to my neighbor, and the other ones are the second iteration. What did I change? I just made sure that I carefully placed them on the tray. This way they didn't have such a big area here, and they would be a little bit more condensed, looking like this, a little bit more beautiful, I think. For baking time, I used around 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how dark you like them. So this is your own personal preference. If you want them to be exactly like mine, bake them for around 30 minutes and they'll have this nice color. But this also depends a lot on your oven. Let's slice one open and check out how the crumb is looking like. Die Krumme. beautiful. They are so soft and slightly moist. Perfect buns. Just look at the crumb structure. Let's taste them. This is the stuff. Just wow. So that's the recipe. Very easy and easy to follow, perfectly to time. But I have one more cool trick for you that I wanted to share with you. What you can also do is, rather than baking the full time, you can just bake your bread rolls for 20 minutes. Take a thermometer and measure the core temperature. It should be at around 95 degrees Celsius. That's very, very, very important. This means that your dough is already done. You have successfully converted your dough into a bread roll. But the Maillard reaction, which gives you the nice coloring on the crust, hasn't happened yet. But we can delay that. We don't have to do it right away. So what you do is, you take out the bread rolls and you put them into a plastic bag. Let them cool down for a little bit. They shouldn't be completely hot. And now you store them at room temperature for up to 7 days. And this is where the magic of sourdough comes into play. Because we have so high acid inside of the dough, so mold won't go on your bread so quickly. It's gonna take a lot more because the pH is so low. We have a lot of acid. And this wouldn't work with regular breads that you buy in the supermarket because mostly they contain a lot of additives to achieve exactly the same thing. But with sourdough, we are using nature to our advantage. So up to 7 days at room temperature and probably for months inside of your fridge. They're gonna stay nice and humid. In fact, you could probably freeze them and then store them for years, I guess. So then, when you want to have fresh bread rolls, all you do is you heat your oven at exactly the same settings we used before. You place your bread rolls inside and they will be super fresh, just like if they had been completely baked. I'm using around 10 minutes for that setting, but it depends on how dark you like your bread rolls to be. This technique is called Parbaking and it works so well with sourdough because of the acidity. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. The bread rolls are really something we Germans love a lot. Don't miss next week's video where I'll be showing you how to use a pH meter to make the perfect sourdough bread at home. It's a tool to measure the acidity of your dough. And it makes it so easy. Seriously, I think it's the best tool to always have reproducible sourdough bread at home. So if you are an analytical person, then you definitely want to check that out. Stay tuned and as always, may the gluten be with you.